Have you ever noticed when you're working on something that it just feels super easy, and other times you're just like completely struggling? There's no way you can do anything. Your mind is thinking about everything but what you're doing. This is what this video is about, is understanding how to get into that state of mind that we call flow, and how to work through that agitation period that comes before. This idea of the flow state was coined by a psychologist in the long time ago named Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi. I'm not even I'm just gonna put his name, just the text, okay?
We're friends, so we call him Mihi.
So Mihi came up with this idea of the flow. Stop. He came up with this idea of the flow, and it's basically like losing yourself in the activity that you're doing. And this is across the board, from sports to work on computers to studying in school. And it separates people from greatness and mediocrity. And really being able to find the flow and get yourself into it is a skill that seems like it happens by accident, but just because it feels random doesn't mean that the right things didn't align for it to happen. So as a self-employed filmmaker, I feel like I am in the flow super easily when I'm filming, when I pick up the camera. And I feel like it's because it's this external pressure. There's people counting on me. The client is there. But when I sit down to edit, it's a whole different game. It's my phone is there to distract me, the emails and the YouTube. And it's so much harder to get into that enjoyment period in editing than it is with filming. So I've put a lot of research into this, understanding it from a neuroscience standpoint, from a psychological, motivational standpoint, and really like, how can I engage this regularly? Let's start with the foundation first. There's not just, you know, if you're living a super unhealthy life where you're eating bad, you're not exercising, you're not drinking water, and some of you are gonna be like, oh, let me click off the video now. No, it's like, the first step is do these basic things, right? If you're going to sleep late, then you got to wake up a little bit later. Or if your job demands that you have to wake up early in the morning, then you need to go to sleep a little bit earlier in order to get enough sleep, okay? So getting enough sleep, drinking enough water, eating enough healthy foods to get enough vitamins, and just getting a basic nutritional foundation to be a normal person, okay? So as soon as you have those needs met, there's routines that you can get into place in order to get into the flow state before you work or while you're working. Meditation has been something that I've been really putting a lot of time into over the past couple of weeks. For me, what's been working is this app by Sam Harris, the Waking Up app, and having like a guided meditation has been critical for me, because it's really hard for me to sit and just listen to my breath and not be super distracted. So having that guided meditation, that's been game changing for me. Let's say you're like, okay, today I have a test I really need to study for, or I have a project that I really need to sit down and work on. I wake up, I have coffee, or super coffee, which is like a coffee that has vitamins in it and stuff, or I'll have yerba mate. And I get the caffeine going. Once I'm awake for like 2 or 3 hours, this is a good time to sit down and meditate. I'll meditate for 10 or 15 minutes. And then I put on some music, headphones, whatever it is. It just has to be something that gets me going, gets me feeling good about what I'm doing. And that's because in order for flow to happen, and this is from Andrew Huberman, neuroscience standpoint, in order for the flow to happen, which is like a mixture of dopamine and other stuff that helps you focus, you have to go through this hunger period or this agitation period. So you can't really cheat it. There's no quick way to do it. Now, as far as the quick way to do it, there are supplements that have worked for me. The alpha GPC and the L-phenylalanine that are also suggested by Huberman. This is not something you could take every day like vitamin C. It's something that you would use in a short burst that gives you 30-40 minutes of extra, very small amounts of dopamine that just makes the agitation period of starting a new project or beginning a new thing a little bit easier. As far as any other brain supplements on the market, nothing has really worked for me on like an ongoing basis. I do think there's an element of placebo effect to it that helps you, because there's a lot of like clinical stuff that shows that placebo has a pretty strong effect. Aside from that, like there's nothing that I would recommend that I've actually seen that helps me. But as far as the cheat code button and the prescription medication, my quick story, anecdotal experience, after taking it and realizing, oh, my work isn't actually the best quality work. That was my experience, you know, like anybody else might have a totally different experience with it. But I found that the recovery process of that, of like once you realize, okay, I'm having side effects from this, it's giving me anxiety, all right, I need to stop. Then that recovery process after, of like recovering back to baseline and trying to get my focus back to what it was normally, was brutal. And I mean, it's been 5 or 6 years since I've taken anything like that. And I can confidently say now that where I'm at now, by putting in the work to become more focused naturally, I'm 5 times more able to concentrate than I was at that time. So it really is important to build this routine of repetition, of trying to get into the flow and setting yourself up for success naturally, because then you're going to be able to put in so many more hours, and it's going to stack on top of itself over time, and you're just going to get compounding interest on your focus. Finding your natural rhythms. Now, everybody's different, right? And then you change over time as you get older too. Like for me, when I was younger, I was able to really focus between like 11 at night and 2 in the morning. And I still have times randomly where at midnight I'm like ready, I'm focused, and I'm able to do like super creative work. For me, it's like the novelty in the routine that actually helps generate flow as well. But for the most part, you're gonna have this routine of when it's easier for you to get into the flow. And that's where the mindfulness can come into play, because you'll be able to catch yourself realizing, oh wow, I was just in the flow for an hour. What time is it? Oh, all right, at this time, I'm more focused. Let me try this time again tomorrow. And then you find that there's these certain times of the day where it's easier to get into the flow. So that's when you can start setting up the routine of you're drinking the caffeine, you're meditating, then you're sitting down to listen to music, and then boom, you're like really creating the environment in order to fall into flow. I can really attest to that like setting yourself up and creating the environment in order for you to work at your best, it just makes it easier for everything to just happen naturally. Dealing with distractions. When you sit down and you got your music going, you got your caffeine, you know, you're like, all right, here's the moment that I'm ready for the flow. Well, in that moment, it's still going to be kind of difficult of when you open the Word document to write, or you open Premiere to edit, or whatever the thing is that you're doing. You have to use mindfulness in that moment and not open YouTube and not check the price of Bitcoin and not open your email and not pick up your phone. And it's the mindfulness that stops you in those moments. And the more you feel yourself sitting in the chair, you feel yourself breathing, you see the computer in front of you, and then you start the task. It's this action of tightening that then boom, you're in the flow, and then you're just working on it, and then you start feeling good, and then it starts going, and it's required that you tighten your own focus. It's not going to just happen to you. I don't even really try to do my best work unless I know that I've created the environment to do my best work. I'll do other stuff that I know doesn't really require that much focus, like I'll send emails or invoices or whatever. But when I know I have to like execute my best work, I'm like, all right, I'm not even going to sit down to try unless I do all these other things first that build up to it. The thing about finding when is the best time for you to fall into flow and finding your specific rhythm for you as an individual, it requires trying. And you're not going to be watching Netflix and then all of a sudden you're like, now's the time. I'm ready to get into flow. I can go focus right now. That's never going to happen. You have to try, and you might fail a bunch of times. You'll realize, okay, it's 10 o'clock in the morning, and I'm sitting down to work. Man, this is not happening. All right, do something else for 2 hours, 3 hours, right? Go watch an episode of Netflix for an hour, whatever. But try again at a different time, and then see how that feels. Let's say you work a job from 9 to 5, and you notice at that job you might lose focus 80% of the day, but certain times of the day, maybe like an hour before lunch, maybe like 11, you're super focused. Or maybe like right after lunch, maybe right after lunch, you eat lunch and you drink a Red Bull and you're like, man, I'm ready to grind it out for the rest of the day. So that means like from 2 to 5, that's your window. So if you got a side hustle that you're working on, or you're in college or something, and you know that's your time, then on a Saturday or Sunday or whenever you're not working, try to do it at that time. So, and then keep a journal or keep a mental note of like when those times are. And again, like that's how the mindfulness helps you, because you'll remember in those moments, oh yeah, I'm working on remembering how to get into flow. I was just in flow. What time is it? Oh, it's 2:00. Oh, that's my time. The more you try, the more you get used to that annoying feeling, and the more like awareness you have about, okay, getting into flow or working on something is going to be annoying at the beginning. And the more you push through that annoying feeling, the more you come to expect the annoying feeling, the more it just becomes a part of it, and it's not so debilitating. It's like getting out of bed in the morning. If you get used to just getting out of bed within a couple of minutes, then it gets easier. But if you are always laying in bed for 20 or 30 minutes, then it's like impossible to get out of bed in the first 2 minutes if what you're used to is laying in bed for 30 minutes. So it really takes that effort. And then once you get the effort going, you realize it gets easier, and then it gets super easy once you get into flow. But it always is going to start with effort in the beginning. And the more you accept that as a part of the process and lean into it, then the better it gets, the better you get, the easier it gets, and the more productive and creative you can be.